If you could have an absolute guarantee of protection against the worst financial decisions, destructive relationships, and moral failures of your life, how much would you be willing to pay for it? In the second chapter of Proverbs, Solomon presents us with a kind of spiritual and mental insurance policy that costs no money, yet requires a type of effort that most people today are unwilling to make. In the first chapter, we saw wisdom crying out in the public squares, offering herself freely to anyone willing to listen. But now, in chapter 2, the dynamic changes. Wisdom is no longer shouting in the streets. She is hidden like a precious treasure. And if you want to find her, you must be willing to dig for her. The chapter begins with a series of conditions that reveal the intensity of our pursuit. Solomon writes, "My son, if you receive my words and treasure my commandments within you, so that you incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding." Notice the action words he uses. This is not about casually reading a passage or listening to advice while scrolling through your phone. He speaks of receiving, storing deeply within the mind, training the ear to listen carefully, and actively directing the heart toward understanding. In today's hyper-connected world, where our attention is constantly fragmented by notifications, entertainment, and endless distractions, the first step toward wisdom is intentional focus. Wisdom does not usually enter a distracted mind. It requires a willingness to slow down, to listen, and to reflect. It demands moments of silence in which truth can take root. Before wisdom can guide our decisions, it must first capture our attention. The person who learns to quiet the noise and focus on what truly matters is already taking the first step toward a wiser and more meaningful life. In verses 3 and 4, the search becomes even more urgent. Solomon writes, "Indeed, if you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice for understanding, if you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures." Think about the metaphor of mining. No one finds silver or gold by casually wandering across the surface of the earth. Valuable treasures are discovered only by those willing to dig deep, work hard, persevere, and spend countless hours searching beneath the surface. Solomon is asking us a challenging question. How often do we pursue truth with the same passion and determination that people pursue money, success, and material gain? Many people invest enormous amounts of time chasing entertainment, social media, and temporary pleasures, yet devote very little effort to understanding the principles that govern a wise and meaningful life. Imagine how different our lives would be if we spent even half as much energy seeking wisdom as we do seeking comfort and distraction. True wisdom is not found accidentally. It is discovered by those who value it enough to pursue it relentlessly, like a treasure worth more than gold itself. And what is the promise for those who choose to dig that deeply? Verse 5 answers with remarkable clarity. "Then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God." Here we encounter once again the concept of the fear of the Lord, but now it is directly connected to an intimate knowledge of the Creator. This is not merely intellectual information about God. It is a deeper understanding of His character, His ways, and His wisdom. Then, verse 6 reveals the source of this priceless treasure. "For the Lord gives wisdom, from His mouth come knowledge and understanding." This teaches us a truth of immense importance. True wisdom is not simply the product of human effort, experience, or academic achievement. It is ultimately a gift from God, We are responsible for seeking, studying, listening, and pursuing understanding, but it is God who opens our eyes to see what is true. Human effort prepares the heart, but divine illumination brings genuine understanding. The wisest people are not those who rely solely on their own intelligence, but those who humbly seek God's guidance and allow His truth to shape their decisions, perspectives, and way of life. Beginning in verse 7, Solomon starts to describe the practical and extraordinary benefits that this pursuit of wisdom brings into our daily lives. He explains that God stores up sound wisdom for the upright, and that He is a shield to those who walk in integrity. Pay close attention to that image, a shield. What does a shield do? It does not prevent the battle from taking place, but it protects you from the arrows aimed at your heart. In the journey of life, you will face financial hardships, family disappointments, unexpected setbacks, and moments of intense moral pressure. No one is exempt from life's battles. The integrity that comes from wisdom functions like an invisible shield. It protects what is most valuable within you. It guards your reputation when others compromise their character for temporary gain. It preserves your peace of mind when circumstances become chaotic. It allows you to sleep at night with a clear conscience, even when the world around you seems to be falling apart. Wisdom does not promise a life without challenges, but it provides the protection, strength, and stability needed to face those challenges without losing your character, your purpose, or your relationship with God. Verses 8 and 9 reinforce this protection in a remarkable way, telling us that God guards the paths of justice and preserves the way of His faithful ones. Then, according to the text, something extraordinary happens. You begin to understand righteousness, justice, fairness, and every good path. Think about how valuable that is. Many of life's greatest regrets come from poor decisions made in moments of confusion, emotion, or pressure. Wisdom gives us the ability to see beyond the immediate moment and recognize the path that leads to what is right and beneficial. The final result of this pursuit is described beautifully in verse 10. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. At this point, wisdom is no longer an external rule that feels restrictive or burdensome. It becomes part of who you are. What once felt like discipline becomes delight. What once seemed difficult becomes desirable. You begin to enjoy making wise choices, not because you fear punishment, but because your heart has been transformed. Your soul starts to recognize the beauty of truth, integrity, and righteousness, and doing what is right becomes a source of joy rather than obligation. And how does this wisdom protect us in practical terms? The passage divides this protection into two major areas of danger that we encounter in the real world. The first form of protection, described beginning in verse 12, is protection from evil influences and corrupt counsel. Solomon explains that wisdom will deliver you from the way of evil men and from those who speak perverse things, from those who abandon the paths of righteousness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the wickedness of others. How often do we see people destroy successful careers, healthy marriages, lifelong friendships, and even their reputations because they listen to the advice of cynical, greedy, or self-serving individuals? The person who speaks corruptly does not always appear dangerous. In fact, they often present themselves as intelligent, practical, confident, and progressive. They may encourage shortcuts, compromise, or questionable decisions while making them sound reasonable and attractive. Wisdom gives you the discernment to look beyond persuasive words and recognize the true direction behind them. It enables you to read between the lines, identify hidden motives, and see the darkness that may be concealed beneath a seductive and convincing message. In a world filled with conflicting voices, wisdom becomes a safeguard that helps you distinguish truth from deception and integrity from compromise. The second form of protection is even more personal and potentially more dangerous. Beginning in verse 16, Solomon says that wisdom will deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words, who abandons the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. Although the passage uses gender-specific language that reflects the culture of its time, the principle is universal and applies equally to men and women. The warning is about the temptation of unfaithfulness, betrayal, and relationships built solely on flattery, physical attraction, and selfish desire rather than commitment, integrity, and moral responsibility. The author uses remarkably strong language to describe the consequences of giving in to this temptation. In verses 18 and 19 he writes, "For her house leads down to death, and her paths to the dead. None who go to her return, nor do they regain the paths of life." These words remind us that some decisions carry consequences far beyond the momentary pleasure they promise. A single act of betrayal can shatter trust, destroy families, damage reputations, and leave wounds that take years to heal. Wisdom acts as an early warning system, helping us recognize danger before we become trapped by it. It teaches us to value character over charm, commitment over temptation, and lasting truth over fleeting desires. In doing so, it protects not only our relationships, but also our future, our peace of mind, and the life God desires for us to live. What Solomon is warning about with such seriousness is that certain moral failures and broken covenants can leave wounds so deep that rebuilding a person's life becomes incredibly difficult. The momentary pleasure of a selfish affair, a betrayal, or a reckless decision may seem harmless at first, but the ultimate cost can be devastating. Families can be torn apart, trust can be shattered, reputations can be ruined, and emotional scars can remain for years. Wisdom serves as a lighthouse in the darkness, illuminating the cliff's edge before you take a step toward the abyss. It helps us see the long-term consequences of our choices before those consequences become our reality. Rather than focusing on temporary gratification, wisdom teaches us to value what is lasting, honorable, and life-giving. As the chapter draws to a close, Solomon presents a striking contrast between two different ways of living. In verses 20 and 21, he encourages us to walk in the way of good people and to remain on the paths of the righteous. He declares that the upright will dwell in the land and that the blameless will remain in it. The message is clear. The path of wisdom leads to stability, security, and a lasting legacy. While the world often celebrates shortcuts and immediate rewards, God honors those who choose integrity, faithfulness, and righteousness. The person who walks wisely may not always take the easiest road, but they are building a life that can endure the storms and challenges that inevitably come. To dwell and remain speak of stability, legacy, and long-term peace. It is the picture of a tree with deep roots. one that endures storms, strong winds, and changing seasons, yet remains firmly planted in the same place. Its strength does not come from favorable circumstances, but from the depth of its foundation. On the other hand, verse 22 closes the chapter with a sober and realistic warning for those who choose to ignore these truths. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the unfaithful will be uprooted from it. Those who build their lives on deception, injustice, selfish ambition, and the exploitation of others may appear successful and prosperous for a season. They may accumulate wealth, influence, or temporary admiration, but their foundation is fragile because it is built on principles that cannot endure. Sooner or later, the consequences of their choices catch up with them. What seemed strong is revealed to be unstable. What appeared permanent is exposed as temporary. They are uprooted, leaving behind no lasting legacy and no memory worthy of honor. Proverbs chapter 2 leaves us with a powerful choice. We can pursue wisdom as a hidden treasure, allowing God to shape our hearts, protect our paths, and guide our decisions. Or we can follow the easier road of temptation, compromise, and self-reliance. One path leads to stability, purpose, and life. The other ultimately leads to destruction. The choice, Solomon reminds us, is ours to make every day. To apply the lesson of Proverbs chapter 2 in your daily life starting today, remember that wisdom requires an active pursuit. It is not something that simply appears. It must be sought with intention and perseverance. Make time to study, reflect, and seek understanding as if you were searching for gold or a hidden treasure. Guard your mind against negative influences, deceptive voices, and empty flattery, and allow integrity to serve as your daily shield in both small and life-changing decisions. If this study has given you a new perspective, consider sharing this message with someone who may benefit from it. And as we continue this journey together, leave your answer in the comments. What practical decision can you make today to pursue wisdom with the same dedication that you pursue professional success? Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming chapters in this study of Proverbs. There is still much more wisdom to discover, and each chapter contains timeless principles that can transform the way we think, live, and make decisions. May wisdom be your shield, may integrity guide your steps, and may God grant you discernment in every area of your life. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.